Yes, the recording has started now. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kofo David. I'm the president of the Racial Equality Society of Inner Temple. And as you know that we have quite a number of guests attending, we will be having, I'll look at them in the order they appear on my screen. So we'll be having Professor Leslie Thomas Casey. We will be having Julius Nkafu, who's a fellow at the Chartered Institute of Arbitration. We have Kitan Osami, and we have Grace Brown. I will introduce them better when it comes to each of them's turn to speak. I will also introduce the members of the exec of the Racial Equality Society, and that is myself, President. Vice President is Tamina Mia. The Secretary General is Pearl Annin, and we have the LGBTQIA+ officer, who's Ogechi Obioha. There is a chat caption function if you want to actually read the transcript live of what's being said. So you can click on the 3 dots on the bottom right hand of your screen and then click on captions, and then you'll be able to read the captions as things are being said. I would like to say thank you once again to everyone who's attended and for booking in advance. It is really good to have a full house. We will be having comfort breaks, and the order of the day would be, we'll have the speakers first, and then we'll have a comfort break of 3 or 5 minutes, and then everyone resumes for a question and answer session. So I think we should start with Kitan. Kitan, sorry, have we let everyone in?
Yes, we're letting them in as they come.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll start with Kitan Ososami. Kitan is she was called to the bar in 2021, and she is a pupil at Red Lion Chambers, specializes in crime, civil liberties, and she's done some research on digital exclusion from online justice, mental health, and she's a youth advocacy worker for BLAM. I wouldn't take too much time to go into Kitan's background, because I think it's also helpful to hear from Kitan herself. I think that would be part of, the route towards securing pupillage. So Kitan, could you kind of tell us a bit more about yourself and about how you got to where you are? And
okay, thank you, Kofu. So yeah, like you said, my name is Kitan, and I'm currently a pupil at Red Lion Chambers. I started my pupillage last year, January, and it's an 18-month pupillage. So I am nearly at the end. I will be applying for tenancy at the end of June. And so my pupillage at my chambers is 18 months. Obviously, you'll know some are 18 months, some are 12 months. It depends on the chambers and also the area of law that you're in. So a bit about my journey. I decided that I wanted to be a barrister when I was about 15 or 16 years old. And that was as a result of me basically always getting in trouble in school and always wanted to fight my teachers. And it was actually one of my teachers who said to me, "Oh, you make a good lawyer." And ever since then, it just literally sparked something within me. And I was working towards that since that age. And so I did a law degree at the University of Birmingham. After my law degree, I did some work experience and mostly volunteering. It was very, very hard at that time to get a paid legal job, as I'm sure many of you people here would relate to. It was constantly, oh, we need LPC, we need BPTC, oh, you need more experience. But it's like, how am I supposed to get the experience if you're not going to give me the experience? But I did a lot of volunteering stuff, and that eventually led to getting a paid legal job. And after I did that, I did a master's. So my master's was in criminal justice at Queen Mary University, and I loved that. I found that very, very stimulating. It gave me everything that I didn't get in my undergraduate, and it also exposed me to new areas of law and justice that I wasn't previously aware of. And so after my master's, I did another year of working and volunteering. And during that time, I applied for a scholarship at Middle Temple, and I have people here in the Temple, but Kofu invited me. I'm Middle Gang. And so I got the scholarship for Middle Temple, and I started my BPTC the year after. So 2019, I started my BPTC. We were hit by COVID, so things got postponed. And I eventually finished my exams and was called in 2021. So I got pupillage on my second time applying. The first time that I applied was the year in between working and starting the BPTC. So throughout my journey as an aspiring barrister, I'd go to all these events such as this, and everybody says it's so hard, you need to have lots of experience. And so in my head, I thought, how dare I apply without a list long of different experiences that tick every single box that Chambers are after. In hindsight, that was best for me because I was able to really develop as a person and understand what motivates me and what inspires me and what kind of lawyer I want to be. However, I acknowledge that some people do apply straight out of undergraduate and they're successful, and that doesn't necessarily make them better barristers than somebody who applied 10 years after they graduated. It all depends on the person. But for me personally, I really appreciated the time that I wasn't constantly going for pupillage. So on my first time applying, I received 2 first-round interviews, and I was really, really excited because I hadn't even done the bar course. So I thought, oh yeah, pat myself on the back for that. I didn't get any second-round interviews, which absolutely gutted me at the time. But again, in hindsight, it was for the best. In between the year of me applying for the first time and applying for the second time, I really took heed of all the feedback that I got from the first round interviews that I did receive, and also feedback from my written applications that didn't get interviews. And I find that to be very, very helpful. And it's a tip that I always give to people, is that you have to be proactive in acknowledging where you may have fallen short and how you can address that so that you're better next time round. So one thing that came across in the first round interviews that I did do was advocacy. So when I started the bar course, that was good because I was able to take advantage of all the advocacy opportunities that they had, and also go out and forge my own advocacy opportunities. And I found that to be very helpful in the forthcoming interviews that I did the following year. And so I got my pupillage in 2020, and then I started in 2022. So in between, I had another long break of just working and vibes in, as I like to call it, and being fun employed. And again, that was very good for me because I was able to just sit back and relax and not think constantly applications. But I would definitely recommend to anybody at whatever point that it is you're in at the moment, whether it's applying, I mean, this is a pupillage application session, so I assume everybody here is in the process of applying, but to really take heed of feedback that you may have got so far, and always seek feedback from other people, whether those are mentors through your ins or through your bar school, or just people that you may have met at events. So many people were willing to help me out in that way. And these are random connections that I had made at conferences that I went to or networking sessions. And so I think that's everything that Kofi has asked us to speak about, but I'm sure we'll have more opportunities to talk after the Q&A. That's me, thanks.
Many thanks, Kitan. That's very interesting to hear your journey on the way. Next, we'll hear from Julius Nkafu. Julius is called to the bar in 2 jurisdictions, England and Wales, as well as Cameroon. He's a qualified solicitor as well as a barrister. He's a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitration and specializes in international business, mediation, arbitration, and he's also a member of the London Maritime Arbitration Association. Welcome, Julius. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how how it happens to work out being both a solicitor and a barrister?
Thank you so much, Kofo. You cannot be the two at the same time. I used to be a solicitor, even though I still have the boots hung up somewhere, so that it sometime in the future, if I decide to switch back, I would. But in the meantime, I jumped over from the solicitor's camp to the bar in 2014. So my route has not been like Keaton's or some other barristers who have gone through the traditional way of seeking pupillage and so on. And when I came to the bar, I actually didn't make applications to get pupillage. I was invited by different sets to apply for pupillage through them. And the reason is because I think it is about what can you bring into the mix? What are you bringing with you? Now, I practiced for several years like a solicitor, but when I was a solicitor, I did a lot of advocacy work. I did agency for other solicitors because other solicitors will ask me to go to court for them. Obviously, that will be the county courts and the magistrates court and so on, and the employment tribunal, where I had the right of audience. But as a solicitor, I also instructed barristers as well from different sets. I mean, there was times when I instructed people from Garden Court. So I had connections across the board when I was a solicitor. So there's no doubt, and it's no wonder that when I decided to become a barrister, it was very, very easy for me because at the time there were about 4 sets who were willing to actually take me on, and all I needed to do was do this advocacy exam and the ethics, and then I had to do 6 months pupillage. So it wasn't the normal 18, the normal long time, because I had some huge exemption for the time that I've already practiced as a solicitor. And I did make my application, as it were, kind of by way of a letter, which I was asked to do, and I did. And just the first one that I went to, because I had made up my mind, I knew exactly what I wanted. We were having some plans already, how we would take, we would go to Africa and get work, dispute resolution, arbitration work, and other kind of work that we could get. So it was a team of us already. So I fitted in that team. And so I didn't bother to apply to other sets, because that letter when, in fact, was an email, I went and all was fine. And I think the reason I'm coming in from this end and insisting on it and staying on it is because I know, having had opportunity to discuss with teams, either within chambers and other areas where the issue of pupillage has come up on so many occasions. I know that the competition is fierce, and generally sets tend to look not only at your academic achievement, but also what else you could bring into the mix. In the early days, when you walked into a room of 30 people, young people who have just come out from university, for example, A levels, and you ask how many people had A+, probably had 15 out of the 30 people, and then the number came down as you asked further, added more criteria to that. But things have changed significantly now that if you walk in the same room this day, you ask how many people have got A+, you're likely to find that all the 30 people have got A+. So then what next? They'll ask, okay, apart from the A+, what else can we ask? And they may want to go down a step further to your A levels, or they could want to go further to other things. But most often they would want to look about apart from reading and writing and passing exams, what other skills have you got? And that is where what Keaton said really falls into place. Other work that you've done in life, if you are searching now and you're not being successful, you mustn't just stay focused on going to the library and making the applications and writing tons and tons of CVs and all those things. Generally, while they are good and important at their starting point, they may not be what will cut the butter. So you could do other things. I mean, shop assistant and other things that, away from the legal field, they all add up and could just play the magic. So I think that, as I said before, one of the reasons that it was so straightforward for me, it was because I was bringing something to the table. So in addition to the fact that I was interested in becoming a lawyer in that set, and I could do, I could read and write law, I could also bring in connections, network, people who would give us work, people who know people who could give us work, and so on, and all those sort of things. Networking is crucial. And I think the final point that I would just want to make is that we mustn't let ourselves be so stressed by the fact that we are not getting it the first time round, or it is not coming across as easy as we'd want. I mean, everything is becoming solicitors. The training contract is equally for the very top sets is extremely difficult. I mean, I know recently, I know of a case, I think it's Herbert Smith and the likes, getting applications, getting about 4,000 applications when the only one, 15 people or 10 people. So you can imagine how fierce that competition would be. But don't let it stress you. Do other things and just kind of free up your mind and try to be yourself at all times. There's always that temptation that if you like a particular set, for example, Great James Street Chambers or Garden Court, as the case may be, you may be so much in love with that set that you are tempted to want to go to their website and study it as if you're going to write an exam on information about the set. And then you go out for an interview or even on your CV and you try to put all those information therein and turn up at the interview and want to regurgitate and say how much you know about that set. Whilst that is something that one could admire for having knowledge about it, but you must make sure that what you know about it is relevant to what you as a person is and you're saying to them and you're seeking to achieve. So yes, do other things. Don't just think that, okay, I will just stick on becoming a barrister and just straight like one way route. You have to think about other things that will, even if it takes you 2-3 years, do those other things so that by the end of the day, you can put them all together and they'll paint a big picture. On their own, they would come across as small things, or being a shop assistant at Next, being, working voluntarily, Citizen Advice Bureau, and doing all other things, Law Center. I mean, I did some work as well with the the Race Equality Council, as it was then known, and all this. But on their own, individually, they may not sound like something, but if you put them all together, they may paint a really attractive picture that a panel looking for people will be attracted to. Thank you so much, Kofo.
Thank you, Julius. Our next speaker is going to be Grace Brown from Garden Court Chambers as well. Oh, as well as Professor Leslie, but we're going to hear from Professor Leslie last. So Grace Brown is from Garden Court. Just to avoid confusion, Julius is from Great James Street. So yeah, Grace Brown from Garden Court, who specializes in public law, focuses on human rights and immigration. She's got quite a number of notable cases. She's appointed to the Equality and Human Rights Commission's preferred panel of counsel. And she does regular cases on Windrush. And she was awarded the BSN Lawyer of the Year 2021. She's part of the Inner Temple Mentorship Scheme. And most importantly, she has extensive experience on pupillage panels. So welcome, Grace.
Thank you, Kofu. I just wanted to double check that you can hear me because I had a couple of issues earlier. Can you hear me, Kofu? Perfect. Thank you so much. So I just thought I would just start by telling people a little bit about my background. And I think it's really by way of contrast, particularly to Ketan's experience, who's much more recent, because I was called to the bar in 1995, so a very long time ago. Since that time, there have been a lot of changes, but there were very few people like me who had been called to the bar around that time. My background is that my parents were migrants to the UK, and I had state school education and started my degree actually relatively late, in my mid-20s, so not significantly, but enough. I did a non-law degree, and that was in social science and public administration, and then did a conversion course and then went on to bar school after that. The legal landscape was very different at that time, whereas a bar vocational course can now be done at a number of institutions. At the time, there was only one, and entrance to the course was very limited, just a few hundred people each year. I managed to get a scholarship from the Inner Temple, and I think without that scholarship, I perhaps wouldn't be where I am today. That was important because there was no family money to do the course, and of course, as it is today, it's super expensive. But I started off with a criminal pupillage, really doing crime and criminal work. But that was only for about a year or so. And quite quickly, I wanted to do immigration work, partly because of the experience of my parents coming to the UK, and also people like them, their peers, and how they were treated and their experiences. And it seemed to me at the time that there was quite a lot really of injustice that was happening around the time that they had arrived in the UK, which was from the I would say 40s and 50s and 60s and onwards, and that group of people. And that really motivated me to do the work that I started to do, which was immigration work. And as Kofo has rightly pointed out, I specialise in public law, but the public law work that I do is primarily on the immigration and nationality side. So that's challenges to government decisions of authorities, and in the High Court and Court of Appeal. I do other areas of public law as well, which include community care, a little bit of environmental law, but all of those other areas almost always touch on the experiences of migrants in the UK and how those can be addressed through the justice system. In about 2007 or 2009, I became a deputy district judge, and so I hear cases which are civil cases primarily, but increasingly they are family law cases as well, and decide those on a part-time basis. So although I have a busy practice, I do sit a minimum number of days each year as a deputy district judge in the county court and the family court. I have, as a member of chambers, I became a member of Garden Court Chambers around about 10 years ago. And before that, I was a member of Mike Mansfield's chambers, but doing the same work pretty much as I'm doing now. And I've always been involved in recruitment whilst being a member of chambers and any chambers. It is a challenging environment in terms of recruitment, because as has been touched on by Julius, the standards are high in terms of applicants for pupillages. General advice that I tend to give to people is to take some time during the process to consider what their strengths are, and to understand those and how they can be presented as unique elements or aspects of their application, because that's what is one of the things perhaps that might be necessary or desirable to set yourself apart. So this is in the context of students being achieving high academic grades in the studies that they have chosen. I would also suggest to people that they should seek out people around them who are supportive of their efforts, and to keep those people close by so that they can turn to them from time to time and when is necessary, in order to learn from them, for them to support them, for them to give them advice. And it's all very well to think that you're able and competent and confident, but it's always helpful to have someone in your corner if you can. Practically, I think many of the people on the call today will know this anyway, but it's worth saying that it's worth looking out for shadowing schemes or shadowing opportunities. So there are formal schemes, and sometimes these things can be achieved informally, which gives you an insight really into the work of a barrister and what you're getting into, which again can give you a little bit of a heads up. Look out for availability of grants, and of course mentoring opportunities. I think there are, it would be right for me to say that there are many challenges that people will face along the way, and one shouldn't get too stuck by those challenges. It's really important to negotiate them, not to let them phase you, to regroup, to try to encourage yourself really to go further, and not to be set back by these things. But there are challenges, and you'll face them at many intervals before you get to where you are. But that's the nature of this process and the work that we do. But it's really important to anticipate those, know that they're going to come, and decide for yourself that you're not going to let them set you back. So I think that's all I want to say at the beginning. But of course, if anyone wants to ask more about my background, or more about the work that I do, and more about the advice, of course, I'm happy to do that later on. Thank you, Kofo.
Okay, thank you, Grace. And now we hear from Professor Leslie Thomas Casey. He's got quite a hefty background, same as all the other speakers. The first Black professor of law at Gresham College, called to the bar in 5 jurisdictions: Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, Northern Ireland, and of course, England and Wales. He's an expert in cases against the police, public inquiries, clinical negligence, amongst quite a number of others. He's written quite some work. I think the latest book is Do Right and Fear No One. Is that the latest one? I think, yeah, that's it. And yeah, he's a mentor to quite a number of aspiring barristers as well. So I can't do justice to, you know, the whole portfolio, but I'll let you give us a hint about how you got to where you are and your background.
Thank you, Kofu. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Well, the first thing I want to say is thank you to my fellow speakers for all the nuggets and information that you've provided. Really useful. I don't want to repeat what's been said, nor do I want to concentrate on me and my past, because quite simply, I was called over 3 decades ago. And as Grace has said, the bar has changed so significantly. And, you know, I don't think it will be particularly valuable to you for me to outline my route to the bar. And if you're interested in my route to the bar, you can read my autobiography, which you know, Kofu has mentioned, which is Do Right and Fear No One. No, that's not what I want to concentrate on. What I think you will get more value out of is if I was to describe how I would do it today if I was applying for pupillage. I think that's much more valuable than talking about how I did it over 30 years ago. And I say this having seen lots of people at your stage making applications and asking for my assistance. So this is what I would do. I think it's absolutely critical that you have a plan. I can't stress that enough. You need to have a plan in relation to where you are and where you want to be and how you're going to get there. But all too often I meet, you'll forgive me if I use the word youngsters, but I mean youngsters in terms of experience as opposed to youngsters in terms of age. I have, you know, young members or would-be members of the profession come to me seeking my advice. And it's surprising how many of them don't have a plan. So you need a plan. That plan has to be written. You can't have a plan just in your head unless you write it down. A plan in your head is just wishes. And there's something magical about writing your plan, reducing your plan to writing and going for it. So that's what you need to do. Then, this is where the hard work comes in, the deep thinking in relation to doing a self-audit. You know, Julius and Grace have touched upon this, which is understand your strengths. And I can't add to what has already been said about understanding your strengths. But what I can add to is knowing your weaknesses or what your perceived weaknesses are. You see, all too often, right, I see youngsters approach me and are really negative. Oh, I haven't done this, or I haven't got a first, or my 2-1 isn't particularly high. And they're focusing in a way on their weaknesses, and they're seeing their weaknesses as limitations. what you need to do is you need to think about how can I change, or how can I make what I perceive to be a weakness into a strength. Let me give you an example. All too often, I'll have people who come from very similar backgrounds to myself. I'm from an immigrant background, like Grace. My parents were part of that Windrush migrant generation that came to this country. Like Grace, I went to a state school and, you know, didn't do particularly well in my initial exams. I began to come from strength to strength as I went through the education system. And by the time I got to university and law school, I had figured out and had cracked the exam system. Now, I could have stood back and I've seen this on so many occasions where people think, oh, you know, my earlier educational background is terrible. It's not good. I had really poor grades. But what they don't understand and what they don't recognize is, yes, it's, you know, you may have started poorly, but look where you are now. The fact that you've persisted, you've not given up, you've gone from strength to strength. You may have done that with adversity. Many people who come from backgrounds similar to mine don't have the privilege of just being able to study. Many of you, I'm sure, would have had to work. And it's, you know, that you may not perceive as a strength, but to get where you are today, having worked, in other words, having had less time to achieve what your peers have achieved, is a strength. And, you know, this is one way of, when I say you sit down, you do the deep thinking, to turn what you may have perceived to be a weakness into a strength. So we're gonna get into this a lot more when we come on to some of the specific questions that Kofu has asked. But what I would say at this stage, and I'm going to shut up now, is have a plan, do some deep thinking into yourself, and identify what your strengths are. Do an audit on those, and concentrate on the weaknesses, and, you know, change your mindset. How can you change your perceived weaknesses into strengths? More nuggets to come. Thank you, Kofu.
Thank you very much, Leslie. And should we take a 5-minute comfort break and then we come back for questions? If people want to drink some water or ease themselves, then we have 5 minutes comfort break and then we come back for questions. So you can turn off your screens for now, and then in 5 minutes time we come back. So if there are people who have questions, you might want to start dropping them sending them directly to one of the co-hosts, preferably send them to Pearl, who's the Secretary General, and then she can start collating the questions. That way, when we resume, then everyone would be ready to go. I can see there are some questions coming in. When you write your question, can you indicate if you would like to ask it in person or if you would just like it to be read out? So that way, we might be able to save time. Okay, think we should all be back now. I know not everyone is familiar with the concept of comfort breaks. It's mostly to help people who do have special needs or requirements to allow them participate. Not everyone is able to go long haul for these types of meetings. Welcome back, everyone. And this is the Pupillage session, Racial Equality Society 2023. And we've got speakers in Kiton Ososami, we've got Grace Brown, we've got Julius Nkafu and Professor Leslie Thomas. And we've got members of the Racial Equality Society exec on hand, Tamir Mir, the Vice President, we've got Pearl Anning, the Secretary General, and we've got Ogechi Obioha, the LGBTQI plus officer. So that's just, bringing us back to where we left off. I'm Kofo David, the president. Just to recap, there are captions in case you want to read what is being said. If you do not know how to turn on the captions, you can indicate or send it directly via text, and then someone will put you through. I think it's best you direct questions through Pearl Annin, the Secretary General, so that we'll have an organized way questions are being fed through. The first question, I've picked up one now, and that is for Grace. And it's from Precious. I think Precious is happy for the question to be read out. So here goes. I have a question for Grace. Does she have any advice for those interested in public law, specifically on what the pupillage panel is looking for when students are applying to these type of specialist sets or areas? And that's for Grace.
Thank you, Kofo, and to Precious for that question. Public law, it's my answer, I think, will chime perhaps with other answers in respect of other practice areas, in that what the panel will be looking for, of course, is going to be an interest in some way, shape or form in issues that give rise to public law challenges, and that's such a broad area. It's quite good in some ways, because you could have involvement with the objects of a particular charity, for example, and how the charities might meet the needs of its subject group, and in what ways the state and or other authorities, a health authority, for example, is failing to address that. So in an application, you might be able to show your work with a particular charity and how you've been able to push forward specific issues or work on specific issues within that particular charity. It doesn't have to be a charity, it could be an organization, but just demonstrating how where your interest is really within the issues that give rise to public law challenges.
Okay, does anyone else on the panel have anything to add to that? Is there, you have, I think, Kiton, you've done a bit of work on public, have you?
I've done a bit, but I'm only doing crime at the moment.
Okay. All right, so do we move on to the next question? Pearl, do you want to read it out, or does the person want to ask themselves?
I have a next question, and this is open to all of our special guests. So the question is, can you advise of any comparable achievements to scholarships or prizes to include on application forms?
Okay, so that's open to all the panelists. You can feel free to jump in. Do we take?
Yeah, I just want to be clear, a little bit more clear about the question, Pearl. Advise on any comparable. So what's behind that question?
They haven't specified, however, that is what's been provided. I believe just achievements in regards to what you've gotten from school, any charities, any ins in particular, prizes.
Right. Yeah, it might be in relation to other areas perhaps of funding. Is that, do you think that's what the question is about?
Yes, I think so.
I don't know, Kiton might be able to deal with that one. She's got more recent experience. I don't know.
Kiton, do you want to take that from here?
Yeah, so on some of my applications, I indicated that I got the highest mark in some of my modules. Now, I didn't get a prize for it, but it was an accolade that I was happy to share. And I thought, even though it's not directly a prize from a university in terms of money or a certificate, it's still something that's notable and worthwhile. So I think if you can think of anything along those lines to show achievement that could be comparable to scholarships and prizes, and I hope that answers the question. If the person who asks the question wants to write in the chat, well, if no, obviously no pressure, but if you feel like that doesn't answer, then I'm happy to think about some more.
Okay, I think we have a question from MD. MD, do you want to ask yourself? Hold on, I'll unmute you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening from the Northeast. I have one quick question, because living outside of the circuits, I mean, London circuits, is quite challenging. Find a diversified background or to get opportunities outside of London. You may have came across to it because it's not really diversified. I just had a quick questions about the area of law I'm quite interested in. I don't know if you have any suggestions about it, our honorable panels, that I'm quite interested in modern day slavery and trafficking issues. And going forward, do you have any suggestions for peoples like me? And secondly, I'm doing a part-time bar course. So to pursue that kind of dream or pursue that kind of subject area in the bar, is there any suggestions would you like to give me as a panelist? I'm really grateful to you. Thank you. And one more thing, Kofu, I think we cannot put anything on chat. Our chat is disabled, so there is no response we can do. I can't do for myself. I don't know about others, but thank you.
Sorry, just one thing before the panelist responds. The chat, you can actually send chats directly to any of the co-hosts. So preferably send them through to Pearl Annin, or you can send to myself. The reason why we haven't opened the chat to everyone is because we've got quite a number of people here. If the chat is open to everyone and everyone was posting at the same time, it would be difficult to keep track of it. These things normally happen in meetings where there are large numbers. But then if there's anything, you can post it to me directly or send it to Pearl. Sorry, so Professor Leslie, do you want to?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The work that you've indicated that you're interested in, there are, as was said earlier, being able to demonstrate an interest in the area is really important to be attractive to a set of chambers that does that work. So let's think this through. How might one, in terms of trafficking, migration, that sort of area, what might one do? Let me say something, MD. There are a ton of, charities, groups representing refugees, out there, locally, not just in the London area. I don't know what part of the country you live in, but I'm sure, that were you to do a Google search of your local area, you'd find something in relation to refugees, migrants, trafficking. We just need to be a little bit creative and searching to find these groups, and then volunteer your services. The one thing about these groups is a lot of these groups need assistance and help. And there you are, somebody who's doing the bar course. You said you're doing the bar course part-time. Brilliant, just the sort of person that's needed. So you just need to use your creativity to try to get your foot in the door, to offer assistance. And that is the sort of thing that when you come to do your applications will make you stand out, because you're not just talking the talk, you're demonstrating your interest. Now, I know Grace does a lot of this work. I don't know if there's anything that Grace might wish to add.
I would, Leslie, thank you for that. And I entirely agree, foot in the door, doing that kind of work. But actually, I think Leslie would know this, and probably you would know this as well, Mohammed, that getting your foot in the door is sometimes really hard, because there's a lot of people that want to get their foot in that same old crack in the door. So in addition to what Leslie has suggested, I would suggest also signing up for seminars and courses. Now, when you started to speak and ask a question, you were talking about, well, you said modern slavery and trafficking cases, and immediately I thought of the anti-trafficking units. They are based in London, but it's a nationwide organisation, unsurprisingly, because trafficking, as we know, has no boundaries, and modern slavery. So it is based in London, but they do courses, they do seminars, they do webinars a bit like this, and the good thing since COVID is you don't have to travel to come to London to come and do these things. Many of them can be done online, which is great. So even if you can't get your foot in the door, which I think sometimes can be quite, well, it is competitive, you can start to do those courses, and then you can show people that you have an interest, that you have some knowledge. Secondly, and on the same theme, not to blow our own trumpets, but within Garden Court, we do seminars and webinars on trafficking, which quite often are open to everybody and anyone, not always, but quite often. So I would suggest doing a search of chambers and sometimes even solicitors' firms and seeing what webinars they have on offer. So again, you're picking up knowledge, not just the knowledge that you can get from reading cases and books, very practical knowledge from practitioners, and so that you can translate that, and perhaps when you are able to get your foot in the door, which does need to happen at some point, you then have again something to offer because you have that knowledge. So that's what I would suggest. And the organisation I was thinking of is ATLEU, ATLEU, if you haven't come across them before. So that's what I would add. I don't know if anyone else has anything else.
Does anyone else on the panel?
Yeah, I think
Julius?
I was just going to say, I think yes, thank you, Kofo. I agree completely with Leslie and Grace. And if I may just add that when we go get these opportunities to go and do voluntary work in these institutions, we should be very, very serious. Take it as seriously as anything, because we've known of cases where people would have this attitude, it's only a voluntary work, so I cannot, I don't have to give it the amount of seriousness that I'll give it if it were a paid work. Because if you do that, then you're only cheating yourself, because it may come back to haunt you. And finally, I'm sure you must have thought about it very, very carefully before, at an early stage, making up your mind that this is exactly what I want to do and stick by that, because by so doing, you would realize also that you're restricting your chances of, getting, other things, had you kind of left your net a bit, cast your net a bit wider than just focusing on one particular field. Personally, I started off doing immigration, a lot of immigration work, and then I went into crime, and I became a cabinet member for crime and community safety in the London Borough of Hackney. That means that I was in the sales with before that, I used to advise clients, attend the sales, and then at the sales and talk with clients and so on. But when I became the cabinet member, I couldn't, because there would be conflict of interest. So I was now with the police, working with the police and that kind of thing. But when I finished there, I was heading already to commercial work and so on, done family and commercial work. So the point I'm getting at is that if you just kind of restrict yourself from the very early, at the very early stage, just one thing, yes, you could be very lucky to get what you want easily, but if you kind of cast your net a bit wider, you may find that, you know, there may just be an opening for family law somewhere. There might be an opening for immigration in another corner. There may be just something for in another field that, you know, you could kind of like go in the house first, get it. When you get in the bar, you can now decide to say, okay, well, I got in as family people. I've done 2 years of family work and so on. I want now to go to trafficking or whatever. That is another way of looking at it. But Leslie said it before earlier on, that make a list, you know, kind of check what you want to do, have a program, have a plan, think about it. Don't just leave it in your head that, okay, I want to be this, I just want to do this, because you can see sometimes councils on television and or even in life acting, and it can be very glamorous, and you think, okay, well, that is exactly what I want to do. But do you think, you know, have you thought about it, your chances of getting that way and so on? Are there other alternatives that you could start with, and then maybe when you're in the house, you can decide to say, okay, now I want to actually specialize on this? Or you find that most of the time barristers would do quite a cross range of things, and as the level of seniority goes up, they begin to specialize, and by the time they begin to retire, maybe they'll just do 1 or 2 areas, and then but when they're young and they come in as young people, they do, you know, a wide range of things, so that you don't limit yourself too much.
Okay.
Thank you, Kofufu, and thank you, Moala. I didn't quite catch your name, and I can't see the screen. See your name well, Mohammed. Yes.
MD. He's
MD.
got a long name,
sorry.
but we know him as
Right,
MD.
I just always MDs usually mean Mohammed, and you know, I always they cut it short for that. But yes,
Actually, that's what
I
it
hope
means.
that okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm not too far from it. Thank you then.
Yeah, thanks, Julius. I think Pearl had a question which has been, Pearl, do you want to read out the question, or does the person want to?
The person has written the question in the chat box, and this is from Nia. She's asked, if you've got first round interviews last time based off your application, should you keep your application very similar, such as regarding why you wish to join the set? And this is open to everyone.
So Grace, do you want to start with that? What happens if someone has reached the pupillage interview stage and then crashes out and comes back again? How is that?
Yes. I don't know if I would answer this question the same in every scenario. So unfortunately, I'm going to say it depends, because as I understand it, after your first round interview, you should get some feedback after that interview. And that, to me, will determine how you put your application going forward. So it could be the case that there were candidates, one or more candidates, that were just better than you. There was nothing wrong with your application whatsoever. I think in that scenario, I'd still try to improve it if I can. But in other scenarios, I would base my next application on addressing the feedback areas that I got after the first round interview. So a little bit of an unsatisfactory answer, I'm afraid, but it does really depend on the feedback that you get after your first round interviews. That's how I would respond, Kofi.
All right, thanks, Grace. Keaton, you've done this recently. I think you said you tried more than once. So how was that? Did you get to the interview stage the first time, or?
Yeah, so in my first time applying, I think I made 6 applications, and then I had 2 first round interviews, and those chambers had different sets of applications, so I wouldn't have been able to repeat it the next year anyway. But my answer to Nia's question would be, it's a judgment call to make, because if you feel like you need to improve your application, then definitely rejig your answers. There's nothing to lose from doing that and everything to gain, especially because I don't want candidates to think, oh, I got a first-round interview this year, so I'm definitely a shoo-in next year, because you might not be. And at the first round, well, firstly, at the application sifting stage, it's members of chambers that are reading applications, and one person may read it, and then a second person will read it as like a double-blind marking system kind of thing. So when it comes to you applying to the chambers again for the second, third, fourth, whatever time, you might not get the same person reading your application the first time round. So the person reading application now might think, this answer's a bit subpar, I'm not going to give them the points for this. So always try and improve wherever you can. Don't take that for granted. And the reason why I said it's a judgment call is because obviously if it's your bog standard answers, like why do you want to be a barrister, that may not have changed that much in the year that's passed. If you have done things to improve it yourself, then definitely include that and look at your application critically and always try and improve it. But again, if you're also stuck for time, you may feel that it's best that you copy and paste some answers from the year before and then focus on writing other ones afresh. So it depends on which areas you think need improvement and also what you're capable of doing with whatever capacity you have.
Okay, thank you for that, Grace. And Maya, thank you for the question. We've got, Rihanna's got the hand up, but then there is also a question from Lauren Marshall. I'll try and see. Pearl, can you locate Lauren Marshall and then maybe unmute Lauren? So. Yeah, Lauren, can you ask your question?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Firstly, thank you very much for giving insightful information that I've been taking notes to that I hope to take away and add to my pupillage application. I noted when it came about talking of the human trafficking and the insightful things that we can do, attend webinars and things like that. But what I wanted to know, is there any, I know the ATLU organization was mentioned, but I just wanted to know, is there any others that I can approach to offer this specific support? Because as mentioned, it needs to kind of be shown that this is something that I am interested in, and by getting myself really involved in the work beforehand, before I get called to the bar, before I go into pupillage or anything like that, I want to kind of portray that. So is there any other organizations that you know of that I can offer that first-hand support?
So yes, yes and no. I think I would reiterate what Leslie has said, is that a Google search is a good starting point, and looking at trafficking charities and migrants' rights is a good buzzword keyword to sort of put in to see what there are a lot of charities all over the country even. So just focusing on your question, I think the other organisation that came to my mind was an organisation called Voice of Domestic Workers. So they don't have, like ATLU, they don't have anti-trafficking labour exploitation unit in their title, but they have domestic workers in their title. And perhaps everyone on this call will probably have an idea and understanding that domestic workers quite often are exploited and quite often are trafficked, not all the time, obviously. So within that organisation, they can have trafficking issues that will arise. And so perhaps if you're And again, touching on something that Julius has said, perhaps cast your net quite wide. So you're interested in trafficking, you're interested in modern slavery, anti-labor exploitation. Look at migrants' rights, because that's a much wider area, and within that you will see some of these issues coming up. So they're not going to be completely focused on that like ATLU, but you will start to see these issues coming up and identifying them. My view is that it really is hard to get into these organisations. I don't think you can sort of rock up at their door and say, hello, I'd like to help out. They are in need of help, but quite often they're getting help from specialists like solicitors and caseworkers, people with experience. So it will be hard to get in, and I'm not suggesting that you don't try. I definitely do recommend that. But I think as well as trying to get that, you know, that experience, you're going to approach those organisations to do these webinars, courses, seminars, whatever. You could also think about becoming a trustee if you have some experience and something to offer of one or more of these migrants' rights organisations that might actually have individuals that they're trying to help who have been trafficked and or exploited in these ways. So yes, so that's another way, is becoming a trustee of an organisation, so that you're getting an insight into that, and you're actually, you know, working and getting on experience on the ground. So I hope that helps. So that was Voice of the Domestic Workers. Again, it's London-based, but it's national, international, national all over the country.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Lauren.
Thank you, Grace. There's someone who sent a note just now, Zohal Ahmed, I hope I pronounced that properly, and who said I could mention Helen Bamba Foundation. So you might want to check that out. Probably I'll try and connect you with Zohal. She said she works there.
Coffee, can you hear me? It's Leslie.
Yes, I can hear you, Professor. Go ahead.
Can I come in? I know that a lot of or two of the questions have come back and have been very specific in relation to modern slavery. But I want to make the point that the model that we have been describing is applicable to most areas of law where somebody expresses an interest. So take the model, the approach that's been suggested by Julius, Grace, and myself, and Kitan, and apply it to nearly any area that you are interested in. And I think that's stating the obvious, but sometimes it's necessary to state the obvious.
Okay, thank you for that, Professor. I think there's Rihanna Larkai who has a question. We are running short of time, so sorry, before we go to Rihanna, there's another suggestion of Strong Tower Foundation, which focuses on modern day slavery. For people who've got these suggestions, do you want to email me or message Pearl directly so we can collate these and then put you in touch with the people making inquiries about them? And then we can take the question of Rihanna. Rihanna, do you want to say your question? Do you want to say it yourself, or you want us to read it out? Rihanna, do you want to read your question, or is that a legacy hand? Okay, I think we'll move on. I will lower that hand. So let's move on to, does anyone else? Okay, there is Alicia. Pearl, has there been any question which has been lined up already before?
Yes, I have one from Zohail. She's asked, can they share what they like to see in applications, or some specific examples of what stood out at pupillage applications they've looked at?
Okay, so who would like to start on this?
I can have a go. So can I just give some bullet points in relation to what makes a good written application? Good, clear, concise English, short, readable sentences, making sure that you have time to properly prepare your application. Taking the time means that you don't do your application at the last minute. Avoid silly mistakes because that gives the wrong impression. Always get a friend or colleague to proofread your application. This is good because it might eliminate mistakes that you haven't spotted. I've already talked about highlighting what your strengths are, and that means evidencing those strengths, not just highlighting them. All the more reason for conciseness. But one thing that we just touched upon, I want to emphasize is, remember, because it's so competitive, you really want to be able to stand out from the crowd. Your application should make the person reading it, it should make them want to meet you. So the thing is, you need to stand out from the crowd. The best way of doing that is you being you, because you are different to the next person. So think of a way to tell your story on paper, turn adversity into a positive, right? And I've already talked about that. So yeah, some tips. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Professor. I think there are 2 hands up. Pearl, do we have any other question? We'll take all of them in one round, and so we can give the speakers a chance to wrap up. Pearl, sorry, you were saying.
This is from Alicia, and this is directly for Julius. So the question is, for someone who is a paralegal, would you suggest outright saying that you bring those connections with you, or bring in more work to the chambers? If not, how would you suggest bringing that advantage into your application?
Okay, and then we'll take that together with Rihanna. Rihanna, you've got a question, right? Rihanna?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, thank God, thank you. Yeah, my question just was, I have obviously a list of chambers that I'd like to attend. My top 3 all kind of specialize in the same kind of area. So my top one is Garden Court. My next is Doughty Street, and then the other one is 7 Bedford Row. And I have experience, and I volunteered and done some work both internationally and in London around the kind of areas that I'd like to do, which is almost everything that Garden Court does: human rights, immigration, mental health law, like the other 2 people have said as well, trafficking and modern slavery and all these areas. And I've done a lot of work and volunteering in these areas. And in my own personal life, I have experience in these areas also. And what my question was, maybe it's more specifically tailored towards those at Garden Court, or maybe not, but at times I find that the audience I'm engaging with, I don't feel, not that I don't feel comfortable, but I don't feel like it's necessary to also share my own personal experiences in these areas. I feel that it's necessary to give them the work that I've done, but not my own personal background, life story per se. And so I just wanted to ask, in the applications for the pupillage, I feel like of course, I'll give them the experience, the work experience I've done here, abroad, and all of these kind of things that I've done, which would be good and which would get them to engage in it. But I don't know if I'd feel 100% inclined to also include my background and my own personal experiences that I've had, which is non-professional and in that sort of light. So I just wanted to know, do you think by just including the work experience side that I've had in them, do you think it would still guarantee the interview? And in the interview, then I could make the judgment whether I'd like to share personal, or do you feel like do you feel like it's best to just include it in the paperwork kind of aspect? So it's a really lengthy question.
Yes, thank you. I think I could summarize that question, and correct me if I get it wrong, to say, is it possible for you to bring in your personal experience as well as your work experience to bear somewhere along in the application process? If I think I got that right.
Like I think more so, is it okay to bring in the personal experience after the fact when I see who my actual audience is, if that would not necessarily be more comfortable, but on paper, yes, you talk about the work experience, what you've done in the field that you want to engage in, why you want to go to this chambers, blah, blah, blah. But it's not all the time that I feel like your personal experience is invited. So do you feel like it's necessary to just put it there, or is it okay? And does it still allow you the chances to get somewhere and then put your personal experiences to your audience or whoever it is that's interviewing you in your chambers?
The problem
Okay.
with not putting it down is you may have missed an opportunity to stand out on paper. That's the problem. So you're taking a risk. If you remember, the application is to get you through the door, and you have to do whatever you can to make you stand out from the crowd. And if that's personal experience you've got, use it.
Thank you for the question, Rihanna, and thank you, Professor Leslie. I think there's one pending question from Alicia. I can see there are about 2 hands which have gone up and another question, but we're running short of time, and we're on least time from the panelists. So I think we will have to stop there. If there are further questions, then people can write in. Julius, do you want to take the question from Alicia about the paralegal connection and how to bring in your contributions to the table, as it were?
Yes, I think, thank you so much, Kofu. At least I think the starting point is that, like I said before, sets would like to know what you're bringing on the table. Generally, and I know there are exceptions to that. So if you've been a paralegal, it means at least you kind of have some background about how law works. You kind of get some basic understanding, but more so you probably have connections with some law firms and so on and so forth, who, if you become a pupillage in that set, and you become a tenant, then those people that those your connections will be bringing you work. So put it in your application. Tell put it there. That will be a really good selling point. And you find that even with solicitors, there are firms in the city that will have paralegals, and when it comes to time for them to apply to advertise and get article clerks or training contracts, they will go only for the people, their paralegals. They don't go out, they don't advertise out, they just go for the paralegals and get their give their training contracts out of there. So paralegal work is outstanding, and so put it, and when you go to the interview, blow it up, make it show that it is important, because they know that if this person with this experience, they're going to bring something around the table. And if I could just touch onto what the Rihanna's question, and really endorsing everything that Leslie said. People come from different backgrounds. You don't know who your panel is. You don't know the panel you'll be before, and you don't know the people looking through your applications. And if you're honest, and I mentioned honesty before, if you're honest, just be yourself. Just it could just happen that you are from the same background. Somebody's reading your paper, and they're seeing themselves like somebody who's come from an estate from where they had very difficult times and so on, and they've made it. It will just be a yeah, and they'll be so happy to see. And when you turn about interview, don't be ashamed. Don't feel because you have to. Remember, when you go into an interview and you start kind of making things up, or you fidget, people can tell. These are barristers, these are lawyers sitting in front of you and you're talking to them. They can tell when you're just trying to make things up as you go along and just to create an impression. But keep it simple and just be yourself. Not all of them, not everybody will like you for that, for who you are, but some people like you. So you can't tell before you make your application. You can't tell who is going to. So just be yourself. If you're lucky enough that they call you for the interview, they would have noticed that your personal background, coming from an estate or coming from a very low income background, or coming from, all the whatever, that could just be could just be the reason for them inviting you. And if you don't put it, then you miss that chance. And if you put it, then you go there and you're talking about it, it comes across naturally. But if you don't put it and you go and then you think that, okay, now the environment is right to put it, it may not come out the way it will make the points for you. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Julius. And I must apologize to the speakers. We are a little bit behind time, but I'd like to at least allow all the speakers, the panelists, to give a parting word of advice so that people can go away and ponder on that. And apologies to anyone whose questions we couldn't ask. We've only asked for a limited amount of time from the panelists, and we're very grateful that they've honored that invite. So do we want to start in the order of who would like to go first? Would you like to go first, Julius? So Kiton, do you want to go first? Okay, we'll take in this order: Kiton, and then Julius, and then Grace and Professor Leslie. So Kiton, you go first. Give a parting shot as to what you think, the key takeaway message should be for people from your perspective.
I would say that remember you're a person before you are an aspiring barrister or anything of the like. I meet a lot of people, and I've known a lot of people who have become so overwhelmed and so engrossed in getting pupillage that they make it their personality. And if you're trying to stand out, if you're trying to be successful, you need to be you. And so that would be my parting advice.
Okay, so next.
Yes, I think follow along those lines, Keaton, and say just keep it simple, just be yourself, and try as much as you can to cast your net as wide as you can. Don't over-restrict yourself at this early stage to say, okay, I just want this kind of thing. Using me as an example, when I finished law school, I was with some friends who were aspiring, although we all looked forward to the big law firms in the city and so on. But at some point, I kind of assessed myself and I thought, hang on, if I go down that road, I'm probably not going to get one anytime soon. And I decided to go to a high street firm, and I got a training contract within minutes. And I qualified well before them. They didn't get a training contract. And in fact, some of them have gone into IT and different things today. And I ended up where I wanted. But at the very beginning, I decided to get a humble beginning, go down the high street, rather than insisting that I must be in the city, I must get training contract in the city. So please be yourself, keep it simple, don't get too worked up, too stressed, cast your net wide, go for things that, you can ease low-hanging fruits, and you'll surely make something.
Thank you, Julius. And Grace?
Yeah, thank you. So I think the advice I would give is the advice that is worthy of a US president. And the reason I say that is because it was advice that Barack Obama gave to himself on his rise to the presidency. And that was that you must focus on your goals and not on the ups and downs along the way. And as we all know, coming to the bar on a journey like we have done, there are very many ups and downs. If you focus on those, it's not going to be great. Focus on your goals. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Grace. And Professor Leslie, parting words?
Boost your chances one way of doing that is find yourself a reliable mentor, someone trusted, who can help you, somebody who can coach you, somebody who can look over your application. Find a mentor.
Thank you very much. And then on behalf of the executive, once again, I'll say thank you to all the speakers. We're really grateful and honored that you actually turned up and then gave so much of your time. I'm sure that we will be in touch with you for future events, which we would be likely to hear more from you. Apparently, there are quite a number of questions which could have been answered, but because there are too many, we couldn't take all of them. So thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you to everyone who attended, and thank you to everyone who made this happen tonight. We will be organizing future events, which everyone will be invited to. This recording will be on our YouTube channel, which is at Inner Temple RES. And that is the same handle for our Twitter account. So you can look out for more events there. Otherwise, you can use our email account to contact us, innertempleres@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone.
Kofo?
Yep.
Sorry, Kofo, just to say that if there are questions there, I'm sure we'll be happy to deal with them by email. They could send them to us. We'll help them as much as we can. So rather than not getting answers to those questions, they could be channeled to us by email. I'm sure we'll all be more than happy to help.
Okay, oh, that's a very good idea, and I'm very grateful for that. Yes, if people have questions, please send them by email to us, and then we'll forward them to the relevant panelists. Preferably state which of the panelists you would like to answer the question, and I'll try and record the chat, so I'll see those ones which we couldn't answer, and then we'll pick that up from there. Thanks very much, Julius, and thanks to all the panelists once again. So yeah, all the questions will be answered. Please do send them. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.